Joe Rogan Podcast. Check it out.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
Train by day, Joe Rogan Podcast by night.
All right, we're live. We can't hear ourselves because Brian Cox, even though he's a musician, he goes no headphone.
Well, we can still hear ourselves, can't we?
I can hear you. You're right. We just can't hear whether or not, but we wouldn't know anyway. What would we do? He knows. He's got headphones on. You're right. This is from now on, no more headphones. It's ridiculous.
What would you use them for?
Well, it's like watching television while you're on television. It's like if you were on TV and you were watching a video monitor. It seems weird.
Yeah.
It's a little redundant.
I think we should cast them aside.
Yeah, let's just
in a revolutionary act.
push them away. Like, not just put them down, push them away. We reject you, oh headphones. We reject you, amazing technology. Infinite Monkey Cage.
Yeah.
What's going on, man? What is this? First of all, I'm a huge fan of your work. I said that when you came in, but I have to tell people online. This is a huge treat for me. I'm very excited. Space has been my all-time adult freak-out pleasure. I love watching space documentaries. I love watching television shows on space. So having you in here is a huge treat.
Thank you.
What's Infinite Monkey Cage?
It's a long-running now BBC radio show. So the idea initially was to get scientists to talk about their science, whatever it may be, as you said, cosmology or archaeology, human origins, mathematics, anything. And then I do it with a stand-up comedian called Robin Ince. He's a very good friend of mine. And we always also invite another guest who will be a comedian sometimes, or an actor, or someone who will kind of ask those questions that come in from left field. But it always goes off into some, as your podcasts do. You never know where it's going to go. So we're recording for a live audience, usually in London, and we record for about 2 hours usually and broadcast it for about 30 minutes, and there's a podcast as well, which is a bit longer. But we decided to bring it to the States because there are lots of scientists in the States, lots of comedians, and people like yourself that you're going to do in 3 weeks.
Yeah,
Thursday the 12th in LA.
yes.
And so we just wanted, so we're going to record them for the BBC, and they're going to be on the podcast and broadcast in the UK, but also in front of a live audience. So it's someone asked me this morning actually, and I said it's kind of like a variety show. And I said, do you have those in the States? And I said, yeah, Dean Martin used to do one. So I said, well, it's kind of like if Dean Martin had a PhD, then he would have been that, in black and white, a bit of singing, bit of dancing, a bit of quantum mechanics, basically.
Well, that's one of the things that's so important about what you do, what Neil deGrasse Tyson does, is that you guys, you're entertaining as well as having a genuine passion and a deep knowledge of science. So it's not just like, here's the cold, hard facts, which are amazing and fascinating on their own. But you guys both have this way of sort of germinating these ideas into people's minds that might not ordinarily accept them, because there are a lot of people in America, especially, that associate learning with boring.
Well, I think the important point, the serious point, is that science is too important not to be part of popular culture. So popular culture is the thing that people discuss. So if we see that to talent shows or sports or whatever it is, then we're removing the most important area of human endeavour out of general conversation. So I think there's a responsibility on scientists to say, well, I accept that, of course, I can't talk at the level that I lecture at as an undergraduate lecture course at university, or even a postgrad lecture course at the level of my thesis or my research. I can't do that. But it's extremely important that we don't just cede all the ground. We don't want people in bars tonight or wherever, in restaurants, to be talking about the Grammys last night.
Right.
We would like them to be talking about the fact that the universe may be infinite in extent. They're asking questions such as, how many civilizations are there in the Milky Way galaxy? The answer might be not very many. If that's true, then what does that mean for the way that we behave? These are important questions, but they will never be debated unless we take the time and make the effort to make the science and the ideas and the debate around them part of popular culture.
The internet has also opened up a lot of people's ideas about what science can be, and also it opened up a lot of people's ideas about the actual popularity of science, because there's, until maybe 10, 20 years ago, with the notable exception of like maybe Carl Sagan and a few other famous people that became famous for either cosmologists or mathematicians. It's very, very rare. But now you're seeing guys like yourself, guys like Neil deGrasse Tyson. It's like more and more Richard Dawkins, Christopher Hitchens while he's alive. These interesting intellectuals become much more mainstream. They become because people realize it wasn't that folks weren't interested in these subjects before. It's just they really weren't being presented them. If you don't get enough ratings, if you put your show on Thursday night at 8 p.m. and you don't get X amount of number of people watching, the studio loses interest. The people that produce it start looking at other jobs. And, well, this one isn't going to work, and they start moving on. And that's just the reality of television. And I think that with the internet, people are able to look at some of these subjects and someone will send out a tweet or a Facebook link or something like that, and then you'll say, whoa, this got 1 million people to look at it over the last 12 weeks. And this has sort of, instead of having this immediate time frame where everybody has to pay attention or the show dies, now ideas are allowed to sort of grow.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right about that. I think we, as a culture, underestimate people. I think this is what you found with your podcast. I think there are millions of people out there who are interested in ideas, interested in the latest things we found out about the universe and nature and the way that it works, and they'll come to it. You build an audience, I suppose.
Yeah.
And it's very important for the reasons that I outlined. Our civilization, Carl Sagan always used to say this, our civilization is based on science and technology. And so in democracies, if your democracy is going to function properly, then people need to know about the cutting-edge discoveries and the things that we found out which form the basis of our civilization. Otherwise, how can your democracy function properly? So that's partly the responsibility of the education system, of course. But I see, actually, the media, on the internet and actually on television and radio, as part of the education system. Now, I know that the media doesn't see itself as that often. It sees itself as a corporate effort to generate money for shareholders. But I criticise that quite strongly, actually. We're fortunate in Britain that we've got the BBC, whose job it is to be part of the education system, and it is a national institution. So having a strong public service broadcaster, I think, is one of the best things you can do as a country. I mean, imagine America. I know it would be anathema to the big corporations who run the TV channels, but imagine you had a channel which really had a lot of money. The BBC is well funded, that everybody contributed to in the States, but whose job it was to act in the interests of the nation, whose job it was to say, well, we're going to make these big science documentaries and put them on, and yeah, we'll make entertainment shows and drama shows as well. We're going to make them because we think people need to know this stuff. We want to enthuse the next generation of scientists and engineers. That's important, actually. It's important not to expose people continually to dribble, basically, populist dribble. Because people, I think you're right, people want to think. I really believe that. People are interested. I rarely go into, a bar or a restaurant or a party and people say, what do you do? And if I say, well, I work at the Large Hadron Collider at CERN in Geneva. We recreate the conditions that were present less than 1 billionth of a second after the Big Bang. It's very rare that someone just says, yeah, whatever, and then goes and talks to somebody else. They're interested.
Sure.
I think and maybe you're right. The optimistic view, as you say, is that the internet will remove this corporate layer of middle management in a way. This kind of the television executive. Maybe if you can remove that filter, which is like a sort of a malfunctioning kidney in the flow of information, then maybe it's a good thing.
In a way, it is. It's really kind of an archaic idea. The idea that at Thursday night at 8 o'clock, that's when the show airs. It airs for an hour. Well, now you can of course DVR things, and you can of course there's a lot of television shows have things on demand, so you can download them later. But I think that's the model. The model is the distribution through the internet, and this idea of sending things through the satellites and all the way they're doing it now with television networks. It's like it's not going to work. It's not going to last. As soon as companies like Netflix and now Amazon is creating their own television shows as well. Those are internet-based companies, and they truly understand what the internet is all about. And when Amazon, or rather when Netflix releases a series, they release the entire series. You can download like all 10 episodes. You can binge watch them, which is a great way to get people hooked on shows as well.
Yeah.
It's like this idea that, you know, the only way you're going to watch something is if it's on NBC or CBS or ABC, and then those people that run those networks, they're in a panic because they got to get people to watch, so they'll throw on some reality show about housewives that are fighting to the death, and people tune in. I mean, I hosted Fear Factor. You know, I understand what they're doing. I was a part of the problem or part of the solution if that's what you wanted to watch on television.
Yeah.
You know, they're just trying to get by. Like, they're just trying to figure out what's the next American Idol, what's the next, you know, whatever show, The Voice. Like, what do I have to do to get 18 million people to sit in front and watch a ball being passed from one man to the other and then try to get across the line? Everybody goes crazy. This idea that that's the only way we can get our information, the only way you're going to get entertainment or anything that's coming at you that's being produced and created, that's dead.
What I find interesting about this debate, though, is that the media is obviously tremendously powerful. It's obviously the interface between most people and ideas. And so I worry about the increase of choice in a sense. So it's a very good thing in some respects. But in other respects, what happens, you can ghettoise audiences. Our audiences will become ghettoised. So let's say that, for example, I'm interested in playing computer games. So as a 17-year-old or something, if that's what you're into, you can just watch that 24/7. So you're not exposed to new ideas. So I would say, is that choice really? Choice is really what you mean is informed choice. So you mean, well, here's the spread of ideas that our culture has generated over, you know, more than 3,000 years of civilization. You will stumble across things you didn't know about. Maybe you become interested in ancient Egypt. Maybe you could become interested in the evolution of Homo sapiens in the Rift Valley 200,000 years ago. Maybe you find that fascinating. But if you're not exposed to those ideas at all, and culture has no way of exposing you to those ideas beyond the education system, then we have a problem. So I don't know what the solution is to this, but I think that there's something to be said. It will never come back now, but the old-fashioned model that we had in Britain for many years, where the BBC was really quite dominant, was that you could say, well, we're going to put X Factor on, let's say, or Dancing with the Stars, or whatever that thing is, and then after it, we're going to put a documentary on about astronomy. And the idea is that some of the people who are watching the talent show will drift into the documentary. But I didn't know. I was interested in the moon of Jupiter called Europa that has an ocean surrounding it that may have life on it. I didn't know that. I didn't know. I was interested. And that model works. So you're right, though, it's gone probably. So I think the great challenge is how do you expose people to new ideas in our culture? How do you get debates going? How do you stimulate that kind of excitement about knowledge in this new media world? Maybe you know, but
you're sort of an evangelist in that sense. I don't mean it in a religious way. I mean you're someone who evangelizes about the ideas of science and of space. Like, you think it's very important to spread these ideas. And that 17-year-old kid who watches video games all day, which easily could have been me, that kid will never break out of that